This show can be found on Podcast DC, the new local app with hundreds of options in local news, health, and, of course, of the DMV region. Download the Podcast DC app to hear all the Empire shows as well as the other great content.
Empire.
Hello and welcome to my podcast. Today, Les Carpenter from the Washington Post and I discuss the vibe at Washington's OTA practice sessions. Les called them boring, but that's a good thing. Find out why. We discuss the improved depth, especially along the offensive line, the quarterback position, of course, and much more. You can follow Les on Twitter at Les Carpenter, LES Carpenter. You, of course, can read my work on ESPN.com. I'll have a story up later this week on one member of Washington's offense and what they might do this season. And if you haven't done so yet, please give us a rating on Apple or wherever you can. Of course, if that rating is a 1, just pretend you didn't hear this. Before I play my conversation with Les, let's get to a few nuggets of information. And this is more or less just observations from watching another OTA practice. Cornelius Lucas is working with the first group at right tackle. I don't mind that one bit. Let rookie Sam Cosmi earn the job. Now, of course, you're probably saying, why not just do that with Morgan Moses? Good question. I think ultimately they know Cosmi will be starting and they would have then cut Moses in that situation. Ron Rivera talked about that in the press conference, not directly, but talked about some decisions that are really with a long-term view. That's Cosmi. I think ultimately they know Cosmi will be starting, but it's good that wherever they can hold competition, they are. Now, first-round pick Jamin Davis is working with the ones in the middle, but there's really no doubt he's going to be on the field with the starters because there's really nobody that can challenge him. Lucas can challenge Cosmi, at least make it tougher for him to win that job. It's hard for me to say how well Davis is doing. I can see how he moves. He's clearly athletic. The big key here is how he handles the huddle and calling out signals. So far, Ron Rivera said they've been pleased with that, but we'll see how it develops. There's a long way to go. I think I told you before, but I know some other teams did not think he was suited for that role or certainly wouldn't be this year. But again, now is when you see if that's true or not. It's worth a shot. In the meantime, they have Cole Holcomb on one side and John Bostic on the other. They did this a lot in the training camp last year with Bostic outside before putting him back inside because he was the best guy to call the signals and to run and quarterback that defense. I like what I've seen so far from rookie corner Benjamin St-Juste. Jack Del Rio talked about how having St-Juste and William Jackson III will open up their ability to play more coverages, especially man. I think we've talked before about how it also allows them to match up on taller receivers. There will be much more to learn about St-Juste, but for now, I like how he moves on the field. When in zone, his eyes have been in the right place, and he's always ready to react. There were a couple times he was praised today for handling his assignments right, carrying a receiver into his zone and then picking up another guy, entering his area flawlessly. And he's doing that in part because he's in the right position, slightly crouched, allowing him to break quickly and to react well. Again, using his eyes right. He was praised for something similar in a red zone drill later in practice. In both cases, the ball went elsewhere, but St-Juste did what he was supposed to do. Again, it's only early June, but you'd rather see him doing that than the opposite. I think this kid's going to help. Landon Collins still is participating in team drills. Of course, won't be doing that till training camp, but man, he's constantly coaching the other defensive backs. That's a man who is secure in his standing as a player. Not all veterans are willing to help as much as he is. And it's not as if he only talks to those who will definitely make the roster. After one play Wednesday, he ran up to corner Jordan Brown. If you don't know Jordan Brown, you're not alone. But Collins saw something happen in a play, ran up to him, spoke to him about what he saw, how he could have played a certain route better, and then he left the field. But he does that a lot. I also like that Ryan Fitzpatrick does this with the receivers. Of course, he's got to get to know them, and this is his way to do that. Here's one benefit of having veteran quarterbacks, and it's something that I was reminded of while transcribing an interview I did with Santana Moss. I was transcribing that before I went out to practice, so this was fresh in my mind. Moss talked, and this is from a while ago, but Moss talked about how different it was playing with a quarterback like Mark Brunell versus a younger player, how he could go back to the huddle and tell him he was open on a play, and how Brunell could file that away for the next time they ran that route. With young guys, he said that they don't process it the same. Fitzpatrick offers those benefits as a passer. Often with young passers, again, like with what Moss was saying, they might get told to watch for someone. They have the earpieces and talking to the offensive coordinator or whomever is calling the plays, and they can tell them, hey, on this play, watch for Moss. He's going to break. He's going to be open here. He's open last time. It disrupts their progressions, though. Maybe they're watching more for that guy and then not going through their reads properly, or they're not getting through their reads. They're only watching for that guy. They're a lot more robotic with this, and this is the value of experience. Anyway, with Fitzpatrick, I think he's going to offer that, and that's a good thing, especially it's something that Alex Smith offered for the young group last year, and those young guys talked about that a lot. Back to Fitzpatrick in a 9-on-9 drill. He made a nice touch pass to Steven Sims just over the corner in the end zone, finessed the ball in. Also saw him dump off a pass to tight end John Bates, who basically bided up the defensive back. Couldn't see who was guarding him, but Bates used his size well and made a nice target for Fitzpatrick. Another time, Terry McLaurin got inside of St. Jude's on a route. Coverage was tight, but Fitzpatrick still stuck it in there for the catch. Good coverage, but a nice job by the other two. Fitzpatrick also threw one pick when a ball was behind De'Ami Brown. Now, Rivera talked about a play where Fitzpatrick talked to Brown afterward, and it could have been that one. Not sure. I was looking at something else on that play, but if that's the one, this is the time of the year that you go through all that. If not, we know what Fitzpatrick has done in his career. Anyway, onto the defense. Matt Ioannidis looked good on a few rushes. I know some of you were interested in seeing how he was progressing. I was too. I watched him on a couple rushes. On one, he beat Wes Schweitzer to the outside. On a couple plays later, he splits Eric Flowers and Cornelius Lucas, got through them for a nice pass rush. He looks pretty good. I watched Cosme a few plays. Saw him stone Shaka Tony on one pass rush where Tony tried to bull rush him. Again, Cosme just stoned him. It's funny because you look at that matchup now and say, well, it's a second-round pick versus a seventh-rounder. Last year, if that's a matchup in college, it's a pretty damn good matchup. I did see Tony get the better of David Sharp later, driving him back, showing some strength. Now, I've only seen Tony working at end thus far. I'll be curious to see if they will use him at all off the ball as some people expected before after they drafted him. And the great Troy Apke experiment at corner continues. Didn't focus too much on him, to be honest. And the one play I did, he wanted to jam Antonio Gandy Golden, but he failed to get his hands on him, and AGG shook him to the inside. He did not get the ball, but he won the route. I know people are always going to destroy Apke for anything he does wrong and just kind of say you're done with him. I get it. But all I'm going to try and do is measure his progress because he is playing a new position, and I don't know what he can do there. It's new for him, and as I said before, it's a last-ditch effort to see if there's somewhere he can help. So I'm going to see how he progresses. Logan Thomas looked sharp, made a nice grab on a ball from Fitzpatrick that was behind him, reaching back inside for a one-handed grab. Again, he looked sharp. Montez Sweat was back. Montez Sweat looks good. Speaking of Montez, quarterback Steven Montez was a guy I heard people in the organization say they were intrigued by this offseason. Well, he's going to have to dramatically improve, in my opinion, to make this roster. The other quarterbacks have looked fine. Steven Montez has been more off target. He's got some work to do as we move forward. All right, that's it from me. I'll be back after this break with Les Carpenter when we discuss the atmosphere of practices, the quarterback situation, Chase Young, and more.
I'm Amanda Klutz, Broadway actress, dancer, and celebrity trainer, and I partnered with Equinox to create a custom AK rope class. It's a rhythmic group fitness experience, and music is an integral component. Jump and sculpt using the rope in ways you've never imagined. It's time to get back to moving our bodies. AK Rope, my signature class, now available at Equinox, is a safe, fun, and positive way to do just that.
Hey everyone, I want to tell you about a fun new offer from Monkey Knife Fight that can enhance any sports experience, whether you're at a game, on your couch, or in a bar. It's a daily fantasy sports league that is easy to play. You can sign up on monkeyknifefight.com using promo code JKR and play games such as More or Less, Will an NBA player score more or less than a listed point total? You can do the same in baseball. Will a pitcher have more or less strikeouts than a given amount, etc.? It's fun. And every Friday, it's Home Run Derby. Bet on 3 guys who will hit home runs that night. All 3 hit one, you share in the prize pool. Every week, you can participate in their Eagle Eye jackpot based on the PGA Tour. Choose from any sport, from NASCAR to UFC and League of Legends. And of course, once football rolls back around, there will be even more fun prop bets. This is daily sports betting designed for the average fan to use their knowledge and have some fun. Sign up now at monkeyknifefight.com and use promo code JKR. That's promo code JKR. Welcome back. Now here's my conversation with Les Carpenter. All right, Les. Well, I think this was your first time out there seeing them practice. Is that correct?
Well, I was there last week.
Oh, were you?
Yeah.
I don't remember.
This is one hell of a start to the podcast.
All right, well, that's not the official start. Now here's the official start. So, all right, but were you really out there?
Yeah, we talked.
What day were you? Was it the rookie camp you weren't out there for?
I was not at rookie camp.
That was it.
I was in San Diego for something else.
That was it. Okay, Jesus. Wow. All right, well, let's start over.
I gotta tell you, standing room only is a way more professional operation than this. Gosh.
All right, Les. Well, now we've been out there for a couple OTA practices, and I'm curious, just some general takeaways so far after watching a few of these workouts.
You know, the first thing I thought was how boring it all is. And what I mean by that, that's a heck of a start, I know, but what I mean by that is, if you think back to what we have kind of gone through with this team over the last couple of years, and, you know, last year with no OTAs and COVID, and then when they did actually get practice, there was, you know, a new team name that had just come down. There was Ron Rivera and his diagnosis and, you know, all the things going on, you know, around the franchise then. The year before, the OTA started with on the first day with Reuben Foster going down and Trent Williams not being there, and all these things. And for the first time, I kind of looked around and realized, well, I guess this is what, you know, normal functional NFL team OTAs are like. You know, they're quiet and they're kind of boring. They're just practices without pads and nobody doing anything. And it was, I think, very stark kind of see the difference between the last couple of years and what we're now maybe seeing and what we're seeing from this franchise potentially going forward. So that's the first thing that jumped out at me. They are building something here. And it seems for once that they're building it without maybe some of the chaos and dysfunction and the craziness that just always has swirled around things. You know, that was the biggest takeaway.
It is different. Do you see, how do you see that translating? I know it's hard to get a lot from just watching practice, but do you see things on the field that maybe seem a little bit different because of, not that people were just always like swallowed up by the chaos, but maybe the way they practice, the way they move to drills and all that? Do you see a difference?
Absolutely. I mean, everything is just so functional right now, but that comes when you're in a good place. Not to say that previous regimes here couldn't have also gotten it into a good place, but because there was always other stuff going on, it was hard to do that. You know, I think right now it feels very smooth. Yeah, you know, that's come up a lot in conversations, you know, even at different times last year, talking about tempo and practicing a certain way. And you certainly see it right now. Everything's very quick. It's very organized. It's very efficient. You go from here to here to here. Everyone seems to have a pretty good idea what to do. You know, other things that have jumped out at me is, and again, I know you've talked a lot about this, is speed. Seems a lot faster than it was a couple of years ago. I mean, Jay Gruden used to talk about, gosh, if only we could get a little faster. We really need more speed here. We really need more speed here. Well, over the last couple of years, they've done that. The other thing that's jumped out at me that I think is really, really important is depth. It's not necessarily the most exciting thing to talk about, but even after the moves that they've made on the offensive line, you can say whether or not these were the right moves to make. They are a good 10 deep on the offensive line, maybe a little deeper than that. It's something they haven't been in the past. I think you remember guard tryouts twice in the fall of 2018 during the season. You know, there's more depth on the defense. There's depth at receiver. Somebody's going to get cut at wide receiver who played a lot of games for this team in the past. Started a lot of games for the team. I don't know who it'll be, but there will be somebody like that, maybe a couple people. There's more depth at, it's some of these other positions. I mean, I guess I go back to defense a little bit, but you've got some linebacker depth. You've got a lot of depth in the secondary. We've always seen depth up front, but you look around and this is a team that will absorb injuries a lot better than some of the other teams in recent years. Even last year's team had a start toward being able to do that.
Right.
Look at this team. This is a team that really could probably withstand a big injury run if it happened.
Well, and I was going to ask you about that too, because I know, during our Zooms, you were asking some questions about the offensive line and the depth. And it did seem, I think you're right. I think it kind of goes back to last offseason. And this is where you go back to free agency. It's not always about getting these high-end starters. It's about building depth. And when you don't have that, some of that, you want to get that depth. And I think they had that last year, but it clearly is better. And, that was a big emphasis. I mean, it's clearly, right?
Well, I think you have to be, and that's what the good teams are. Because you've got a 17th game now, regardless of anything else in the NFL. But this is just a sport, and in recent years, the injuries have just gotten, more and more and more. They pile up and pile up and pile up. And, I keep going back to that day where they had guard tryouts. But, I mean, you can't be having guard tryouts, for a starting guard on the, whatever it was, October of a football season. You just can't do that. And I basically had to kind of do that twice. You have to just look at the offensive line. The offensive line right now probably is from one side to the other in a starting unit, not as strong as the one a couple of years ago where you had Trent Williams and you had Morgan Moses and you had obviously Sheriff and they were still there, but you had that was a pretty good.
It was a good line.
But behind that was not enough depth to survive the injuries that happened. You look at this line, no, maybe it's not quite as good a group. But I think that second group could go in there and play and be as efficient as the first group. Eric Flowers. Maybe Eric Flowers won't start here, but he's a very good guy to have to bounce around. And with 17 games, with the way offensive linemen go down today, they're going to need that. And they're going to need that, several other guys as well. And you kind of look at it and you say, all right, they have depth to withstand some of the things. So then it gets back to the chaos, because the day of guard tryouts a couple, years ago, that was a day of chaos. And
that made a deep impression on you.
Well, it did. I mean, I come back and, after a few years away and start hanging around this team every day. And what's the first thing I see? I've never seen guard tryouts in the middle of the season. But that's the kind of stuff that, you can't win when those things happen. Maybe you can sustain it for a little while, but long term you can't win. And I think that the chances of something like that happening with this team going into this year, whatever the position is probably slim. I mean, certainly injuries happen, but it's probably less likely something like that's going to happen. And that helps you long term. Whether that leads to, I don't know what that leads to in victories, but it gives you a base upon which you can build.
It helps you. It allows you to not have your rhythm disrupted too much. But it's funny because 2018, of all the things that happened that year, the guard trials for me were a little bit low on the list. But going to your point, though, there were games where they would, the players would joke about how, I didn't meet this guy until we were in the huddle before the game. And, because you'd have 4 linemen out. I think it was either the Seattle or Philly games that year where it was like that. Brandon Sheriff has had his own injury issues. Even if Eric Flowers didn't start, he's going to be needed at some point. Sadiq Charles, same thing. So, but with Brandon Sheriff, we talked to him today. He's got the second franchise tag. He says his agent is working on stuff. What do you think the future is there for him?
It's interesting, and I kind of you go back to the injury thing, and you hate to say this because I don't like talking about players' injuries. I mean, in people's bodies are people's bodies, but when someone constantly goes through seasons and he can't play a full season, then I assume that probably affects the impact of how much is a team willing to spend on him. And I do think this is that Rivera has certainly shown that he's a guy. It's like I want to wait and see about people, and he tends not to lavish things on in terms of money, in terms of contracts, in terms of things until they've proven something to him. And I almost still continue to feel that there's a little bit of a let's prove this here. You want to be one of the highest paid offensive linemen in the game. can we count on you for more than 10 games, say? Whatever it is. All offensive linemen are get hurt today.
Right.
Expecting them to play 16 or 17 games is silly, but you could still expect a guy to play 14 or whatever it is and be there for the playoffs. And so it'll be interesting to see where that goes. But they have the money. They could have made a deal a long time ago if they were so certain that they felt that this was their guy.
And I think he's got to be certain too. I think they've made those offers, and so that's why I wonder too and
that's a good point too.
That's the other part of this is that what's the big holdup with that? If they say they want to do business, there's always a holdup, and there is one. And so actions speak louder than words in this case. But regardless, I think they'll have a good line this year. The other thing is we've had a chance to watch Ryan Fitzpatrick for a couple weeks. What stands out or what jumps out at you with him?
Well, it goes back to kind of what we've been talking about the efficiency, about the ability to just go out there and just, move everything along very smoothly. For a guy to just walk in new, and we've seen plenty of quarterbacks walk in new here over the years.
Yeah.
He's fit in as seamlessly as anyone, which is obviously the reason they got him. They knew that he would fit in seamlessly. It's not going to be a system that he doesn't know. There's not an offense that he has in some way played some form of, along the way. He's not going to be someone who's going to have a huge learning curve with the offense. He's going to catch up, pretty quickly. And you already kind of see, it's been talked about, but I think you've seen it. I've seen it, him pulling guys aside, receivers, tight ends, like, okay, hey, on this play, you got to do this. On this play, we'd like to see this. Whatever the little things are, you can see him having those conversations. He's already taken it over. He's already made it his. And the guy has been through 2 weeks of practices here. When you move on from Alex Smith in terms of leadership, you have to make sure you have somebody like that coming in. Otherwise, there's going to be a drop off, and it's just going to be hard for players. So I think in that regard, we're seeing what Fitzpatrick can bring. Obviously, let's see what a season is. I mean, there will be ups and downs. The whole Fitzpatrick thing, Fitzmagic thing, but whatever. He is the guy that I think right now that they hoped he'd be. Someone getting everyone to the right spot, being able to throw the ball into the right places. He can make all the throws. He seems very comfortable and confident making those throws. It seems right now like this is the guy they need for this point.
And I was going to ask you too about that, and you brought that up about the leadership part, because when you do move on from Alex, it's vital to get that guy who can be a leader. Now, they're different kind of leaders, but you heard Brendan Sheriff talking about him and just how much fun he was in the huddle. I mean, that's an important part of playing that position.
Well, there's a lot of guys, and some have come through here at times, that can bounce from team to team to team and can learn a system and can go out and know where to throw the ball and do the things. But can they bring the other stuff with them? That's the quote unquote intangible you always talk about a quarterback. But Fitzpatrick has that. He has the presence. Guys listen to him. Guys like him. Guys relate to him. And it's important, especially this is a young team. This is a team that they're still trying to build on. Let's not pretend that they've solved all their offensive problems. This is a team that still struggled a lot of last year. I think he can help push that forward and make this team a little bit better offensively. But it's still a growing thing, and you need a guy who can walk in and be comfortable with himself enough to know this is what I have to do to help grow the offense, to help grow this team and make it better. And there's a little bit of selflessness to that too. And it's a unique guy. And I go back to what Alex Smith brought, those 5 wins that he brought at the end of last year certainly weren't, because of things he was doing physically on the field. Yeah, he was occasionally able to make a throw that got, a score here or a drive, like in the Philadelphia game at the end. But for the most part, he was, somewhat limited physically.
Right.
But it was the other stuff that he brought. It was the immense respect the players had for him. You could see it in what they said and what they tweeted and what they, kind of did when they would think about Alex Smith. Well, if you're going to, essentially unceremoniously dump the guy, then you better make sure that whoever you bring in is going to be able to, command that kind of respect in the locker room. There were very few guys I think they could have brought in that would have been able to do that. And Fitzpatrick, probably the right one for this moment.
Yeah, and I think you see that the way he deals with players on the field too. I mean, he will pull them aside, but he's not it's not a berating kind of thing. It's a teaching kind of thing, and it's a getting on the same page kind of thing. But that's a guy who knows how to incorporate himself into a new system, which is also key. So in many ways, he probably is. But the other guy, Taylor Heineke, do you think he can at all push him for that job?
And let's not forget Kyle Allen either. I mean, he's
Right.
here as well. I mean, they both have the ability. They both know the offense. They both spent a lot of time with Scott Turner places, so they know the offense. They know what to do. They have ability. They can make a lot of the throws. So yes, they can push. They can be competitive. I think it will be a very brisk, mistake-free in a lot of ways training camp. The bigger question with those two are injuries. Can they? I mean, look, the players loved Heineke for that game last year. You could see it, but he got hurt. He's gotten hurt in a few times. He's had the chances to play in the NFL. Allen has gotten hurt. He got hurt the 2 times he had a chance to start last year. So those things, I think, keep you from fully pushing somebody who you've brought in and spent $10 million for in Fitzpatrick to be the guy to lead the team and run the offense. So, they can make it competitive. They can make it interesting. I don't think they can push him so much because I'm not sure either one of them has the starter ceiling. I know everyone's fascinated by Heineke, but, he's got to show a lot more at this point.
Correct. Right. And one game never makes or breaks a career or anything like that. It's certainly what it did is it gave him a chance to be in this position, which is fantastic. It's a great story. But the other thing with Taylor too, and he was talking about this, that dive he had against Tampa Bay. And he even said, well, if it's a regular season, I probably run out of bounds and we have 1st and 10 at the 2. I don't know that I believe him that he would run out of bounds ever. Because I think there's a makeup that he has, which has put him in this spot. And it's a great makeup. I love the makeup. But I just wonder if he truly would. Because I'd heard that with Robert would say that, Colt McCoy would say that. And they always make that little dive, which, again, I give him credit for playing that way. But I wonder if he does have to play a different way, can he?
Well, it's a good question because –
and there's no way to know until we get there.
Because I've thought about that play a few times. I think he had to make that play. I think he had to dive there for that game, for that moment, for his one great shot, and all those things that were in that play. I think he had to dive for that pylon, knowing very well he could he could get hurt. So I don't know. I understand, philosophically what he's saying. He might be right. I also understand what you're saying. I think the same thing with Kyle Allen. In fact, think of how Kyle Allen got hurt in the Ram game. In fact, I was just watching an Alex Smith thing the other night. I was reminded of how, he made that dive for a 1st down, got hurt, and that's, how Alex came in. The next week he's playing in New York. They have that 2-point conversion. And I've often thought, looking at that play, and I wish I could get a better angle on it. I wish I could have talked to more people instead of on Zooms, because I really wonder – on that play, could he have tried to run that ball in? Would that have been the better play than trying to throw it? But he had just gotten hurt diving the week before, and I wonder if that was in his mind. So that's sometimes I think you can try and take this out of guys, and then it changes who the guys are. I don't know. We can go back to that Giants game forever. I still think that looking at it, I wonder if he could have run, dove, whatever to get that win. But on the other hand, he got hurt the week before, so I don't know.
Well, and I know, like, in talking at times to Ron Rivera, his thing, and he said it, whatever he said a couple of times, just it can be different when you're playing with nothing to lose. And in that playoff game, Taylor Heineke has nothing to lose. Lay everything out there. Now, if you get to the regular season, and if you do have something to lose, does it change who you are? And again, there is absolutely no way to know until you put somebody in that position. And I'm not going to say he can't do it. I just know that it's hard to sometimes change that mindset. And when you do, you want to, and because eventually they go back to, this is who I am. This is the way I have to play. So, that's one of the things that you always wonder about.
Well, and the thing that I think is, because let's bring Fitzpatrick into this conversation. This Fitzpatrick he's a runner too.
Yeah.
And he's a big risk taker at times.
Yes, he is.
But he doesn't get hurt. And I don't know why that is. I don't know why some guys are that and some guys aren't. Robert, I think you kind of go back to the fact that he was, trained also as a track athlete. He was a hurdler. He ran straight forward. He never learned, I don't think, the nuance of being able to kind of turn your body. I mean, even when he got hurt the first time against the Ravens, it was loading the guy to fall, jumping on. He couldn't get it out of the way.
Right.
Meanwhile, Russell Wilson runs all over the field, and he never really gets touched that much.
Right.
And I think that's because he was a middle infielder for a while as a minor league baseball player. He has that ability to sort of move his body, or he's an infielder. For whatever reason, Fitzpatrick has the ability to make those plays and not get hurt. And so far, Allen and Heineke haven't had that fortune.
Right.
Maybe that changes. Maybe that's a conditioning thing. Maybe that's a strength thing. Maybe that's, there's certain muscles that I don't know what it is. But it's something to take in consideration when you're looking at the overall package. And could one of those guys be the guy going forward here?
And I think, too, with especially in Heineke's case, that he added 15 pounds of weight, as he said, good weight. So I wonder if the bulking up, does that help him at all? We'll see. And, like I said, with the one thing that's good for him is he earned himself a chance to be in this position. And he continues to be a fun story because of that. And it's like, it'd be kind of something if he took that next step. But I think Fitzpatrick gives them clearly now what they really need. And, And
again, I mean, Fitzpatrick could be a 1 or 2, maybe a 2-year thing here. I still don't feel that whoever that quarterback is that they need going forward, that guy who's going to take them wherever they go, that next level, whether that's a young guy you're drafting, whether that's a veteran player like Tennessee did with Tannehill, whatever it is, I don't feel that guy's in the room yet. I don't feel like that.
I'm with you.
And I don't know where that comes from. I think everybody's idea that it has to come from the draft, it may not be correct. I mean, let's just see how this all spills out.
Let's see what quarterback gets pissed off next offseason.
But it may not even be that. I mean, it may be. I mean, who would have thought that Tannehill would be that guy a couple of years ago? You just don't know. And you could wind up with somebody who, is perfect for who you are. And we're just somewhere we're not even thinking about right now.
Yeah. I mean, and I think, but I'm with, I don't think there's any doubt that the QB of the future is not yet here.
Right.
But I think if you don't have that and you build and you continue building, when that guy does get here, they have a much better supporting cast around them.
I think right now, it gets back to what we talked about in the beginning. That supporting cast is much, much better right now. And I know they've talked about the idea of okay, well, we can't go out and just go get the franchise quarterback, so we'll go fix everything else.
Right.
And then hope that can, and that probably to some degree will work. I assume that, if they stay relatively healthy, if that depth holds up for them, if they've made the right decisions on some of the younger players that they brought in, that I can see that that's probably an effective sort of way to go, at least for the next year or two. But yeah, that learning curve, all those other things that come, you're going to have to drop somebody in eventually. And who that is, where that comes from, is still, I think, very much.
All right, last thing, because we both want to get on a bike ride on a nice day. Chase Young not here. Does that? I talked to Sam and Nikki about this last week. I'm just curious your thoughts. Is this a big deal? A deal? What is it?
I don't think it's nothing. He's Chase Young. He's the best player on the team. He's the franchise. I don't see it as a big deal because this is a relatively small OTA period. He has been in touch with everyone. There doesn't seem to be any alarm. We're certainly used to these things in the past, and we know when the alarm bells start ringing. I haven't heard this. I guess if he doesn't show up next week for the mandatory, minicamp, then maybe it's a little bit different story.
Which way would they expected to be here next week?
Yeah, expected to be here. I have nothing to say. There's nothing that really says to me that this is a serious thing. I think it's just because he's such an important player. It's just that he is kind of, for give or take right now, I'd say he's the face of the franchise.
He is their face.
Yeah, I mean, he's their best player. He's their, and I know there's been a lot of talk in the past, or this past year, you should trade him for a franchise quarterback and all this stuff. And while I understand the sentiment, I also think that he could be the best defensive player in this division.
Yes.
The most intimidating, not even just so much intimidation, but just he plays so smart. He's just different.
Yeah.
I always make the comparisons like they got their Lawrence Taylor. And I mean, I know those are two totally different players. I don't want to stick that on him right now. Lawrence Taylor is phenomenal, but he was a difference maker. And he was a difference maker in this division for years. And, and he just instinctively did the right thing always. Yeah. And I see Chase Young as that. He's that kind of a guy. And, he's very important. Everything he does is big news. That he's not here, I just, actually it's giving some other guys a chance, I think, to show what they can do.
There you go. Yeah, and he'll be here. And here's the other thing, Les. When September starts and he gets his first sack, nobody gives a damn. They won't even care before that sack. But no, when that happens, and
if he's here next week, nobody's really going to care.
No. It's May. Or I guess we're in June now. So it's something that you ask about. It's not something that needs to be harped on unless there is a reason behind somebody's absence. There have been guys here, as you said in the past, who haven't shown up. Trent Williams a couple years ago. It basically highlighted his displeasure here. And so you knew, like, okay, now it's getting really serious. That's not where we're at here. This is just a guy training on his own who will be ready to come in and, clearly will be here for a long time.
Well, and it's kind of impressive that so many guys have been here
for
these workouts when you don't have to be, when we're still kind of in the pandemic to some degree.
And other teams don't have this attendance.
And other teams don't have this attendance. And granted, it's a younger team that's trying to build something, and I think guys get that. But still, I mean, the fact that many are here, I probably overemphasizes that Chase Young isn't more than it would at another time.
Right.
Again, I don't see it as a huge thing, and I do. You still get a lot of good vibes from what players feel.
Oh yeah,
where they are here and what this can be and what they're building toward, and those things. So that all seems good right now. It goes back to what we originally talked about. It's kind of boring.
Yeah, there you go.
It's just boring. It's just It's not.
Boring's okay. Yeah, boring. After last year, boring is acceptable. So I'll just say that. So Les, thanks a lot. Get out on your bike ride.
All right, thanks, Sean.
This episode is brought to you by the NBA. Witness mind-bending competition on the biggest stage between the best players in the world, a place where legends are made. It's impossible jumps that seem to freeze in midair, and spectacular steals that you didn't see coming. It's that one play that lasts seconds that you will talk about for the rest of your life. And let's face it, it's the unpredictability of it all, never knowing when the next big moment will happen. Huge wins and crushed dreams. It's the drama of it all. You just can't make this stuff up. That's the NBA. That's game. The NBA playoffs are happening right now. Don't miss all the action.
This episode is brought to you by HP Plus. In a world full of smart devices, shouldn't your printer be smart too? It is with HP Plus. These printers know when they're running low, so you always get the ink you need delivered right when you need it. Plus, you save up to 50% on ink, so you can print whatever you want, as much as you want, anytime you want. Huh, that is pretty smart. Get 6 free months of instant ink when you choose HP Plus. Conditions apply. Visit hp.com/smart for details.
I'm Byron Kerr, your host for the Curly W podcast. Join me on the Curly W for the very latest on the Washington Nationals. We'll give you an inside look as to what's happening with the Nats right now and give you also a chance to visit with Nats players and coaches, present and past, to tell you what it's like and what they hope to accomplish with the Nationals. From Fredericksburg to Nats Park, West Palm Beach to Rochester, Wilmington to Harrisburg, it's all Nats baseball. Subscribe to Curly W wherever you get your podcasts. Another great show from Empire Media.
That's it for this episode. I'll be back with another one Sunday night. Talk to you next time.